Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, we're back on the hood for that 1950 Chevy truck, and today we're going to spray some polyester primer as a seal coat. We're going to be thinning that down, but before we get to that, we need to do a little more block sanding on this. I really kind of feel like an idiot block sanding it out before getting that Flutter Kit installed so the hood's not floppy. I just really didn't realize how floppy this hood was until we got that Flutter Kit in here. This thing's solid as a rock now. Maybe not a rock, but it's pretty solid. So we're going to do some quick guide coating, block sanding, make sure it's really good, and then blow it off, tack it off, and then mix up some polyester primer. We're going to reduce that down a little bit to make it more like a seal coat so we don't have quite so much build. So let's jump into this and get this thing knocked out and get it out in the sun to outgas and set up. Okay, so I'm just going to guide coat this little area right here. Well, not little, but we just want to make sure when we put that Flutter Kit in there, it didn't affect this at all. And it's going to come out that much flatter. So we just want to make sure this is really nice and sweet right here. So let me and I can tell you, just putting the guide coat on, it's so much nicer not having this thing move around. So I'm just going to get this guide coated up on both sides, and we'll get some sanding done on it, and we'll see how it comes out. Okay, I got a little bit bigger than I was thinking, but more the merrier, right? All right, let's get some sanding done and see how it turns out. What a difference. So much easier. Okay, I can see a few spots over here that are a little bit different than they were when we blocked it out the last time. So that's good. So it's going to be that much nicer right in this area right here. This area is pretty much working out just like it did before. I see a few spots that are a little different. We got a little blue coming through here. So, but all in all, I think it's looking really good. Okay guys, that came out really nice. I don't think you guys can tell, maybe you can, but we got some blue coming through. We can just see through the primer, really good right there, and that's perfectly fine. We're going to spray that sealer coat over the top, and that sealer coat is going to seal all these 240 scratches and then also some of the blue, and then we're going to sand that with finer sandpaper. We're going to break it open, probably sand it with some 320 to get the orange peel off of it, and then we're going to go to 400 and then some 600 dry to get this ready for color and clear. But that came out really good. Really happy about that. It did flatten it out a lot more after the Flutter Kit was installed, and it was so much easier to sand. It was I was able to give it a little more oomph, give it the beans a little bit when I was sanding instead of trying to do it super light so I didn't distort the sheet metal. But that feels really good, really good. I'm going to go ahead and do the other side. We'll take a quick look at it, get this thing cleaned up, and mix up some polyester primer. Okay, came out pretty nice. A little blue showing there, and I can just see a hint of blue here and there coming through, which is perfectly fine. That edge came out a lot nicer. Had a little spot over in here. I just had to keep sanding on till that came out, and that's probably why that blue came through. Over here, some of the blue that was showing came up a little bit more. I went a little bit farther over there, but all in all, this is looking really nice. Really happy about that. Now I'm going to go over the whole hood with some 320 before we spray the primer. Now I just realized I'm out of 320 dry, so I had to grab a DA disc and sacrifice that, fold it in half, 320. But I'm going to sand this up real good all the way around, the whole thing. then we're going to blow it off, tack it off, and mix up some polyester primer. Okay, so you still use a block. I'm going to just use the foam block. We're just trying to sand out some scratches and make sure the hood is completely clean and has no guide coating on it at all. So I'm just going to go over the whole thing. We're going to blow it off a few times. I've already blown it off since I finished guide coat sanding or blocking. And I'll blow it off 2 or 3 times as I do this, because you don't want to keep sanding your sanding debris. You want to get that off there, especially when switching grits, guys. If you go from, let's say, a 120 to a 220 or 240, you want to blow off really well in between, because little bits of that grit off the sandpaper has fallen off and it's in with all the sanding dust. And so what will happen is you'll switch to a finer grit, you'll end up dragging that all over the place, and you're really not doing anything. You're not getting any finer because you're dragging little bits of rock, you know. So keep that in mind. Make sure you blow off frequently. It helps keep your sandpaper clean and helps you see where you're at. So I'm going to finish sanding over this whole thing real lightly. We'll cover the whole thing and get some ScotchBrite, get down inside the grooves and around the corners and everything, and then we'll blow it off and tack it off a couple times, and then we're ready to spray. Okay, I got it stirred up really well. We're going to mix up about 16 ounces, 18 ounces. I'm going to guesstimate here a little bit. And I'm going to put the hardener in before I put the acetone in. So we're going to be reducing this with acetone today, about 3% by volume. Now, you don't want to get carried away if you're going to reduce your polyester primer. If the instructions say do not reduce it, you can probably get away with a little bit of reducer, but most of them are okay with some reduction. If you put too much acetone in, what will happen is you'll start to break down the chemical. When it starts to cross-link, there's too much solvent and it doesn't do it properly because the solvent can't get out of the way. So what ends up happening is the base resins start to be too thin, and it's not the way it was designed chemically. So you want to be very careful when you're reducing spray, just ready to spray type materials. Sometimes the instructions will tell you it's okay, sometimes they won't. You kind of have to play it by ear, but just don't get carried away. The reason I reduce this down is simply because I want it to spray a lot smoother, and just a little bit of reduction really goes a long way with this stuff. So you can actually get just a little bit of reducer in there. We're using acetone today, and that should get us that much better of a flow out and that much better of a surface. So when we go to do our final sand, we're not chasing a lot of orange peel and other stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and get this mixed up real well. And guys, try to remember to scrape your sides. Always scrape your sides when you're using catalyzed materials. If it's uncatalyzed, it's not the end of the world. You're just going to have some thick and thin areas. But if it's a catalyzed material, you need to scrape your sides and make sure the bottom, obviously the stick's bouncing off the bottom, but if you don't scrape your sides, you could have a film of material on there that didn't get touch any hardener. Then when you pour it in your cup, it could stay separated. So always give it a thorough stir and make sure you scrape your sides. Okay, let's get a little bit of acetone in here. I'm not going to measure, I'm just going to eyeball it. And it'll take a moment for that thin acetone to get thoroughly mixed in. You want it combined thoroughly. So just keep stirring and pull up from the bottom. And that's looking really good right there. That's just about perfect. Okay, with the polyester primer reduced a little bit, we're going to get a much larger fan out of the 1.4 millimeter tip that's in this gun. I've seen guys spray polyester primers and heavy build epoxy primers with like a 1.8, 2.0 tip. Those things are gigantic. You can spray latex paint with those things, so kudos to them. I don't think I can pull that off, but this tip will do fine with the way we have it set up. So let's get to spraying on this thing. Now I'm still using a 50% overlap. But the material lays down so much nicer with a little bit of acetone in it. Bug. Okay guys, here it is. As you can tell, it's kind of shiny. It's almost done flashing off. It's still a little tacky to the touch, but you can tell it's a lot smoother than it was. You can see it's really, oh, we got somebody taking a little sun nap over here. He thinks he's a lizard. And it's really smooth and really tight. So when we go to sand it, we can probably just hit this with some 320 really light and then go right into 400 and 600 and it'll be ready for color and clear. So really happy the way it turned out. It's looking really good. Now we need to let it flash off. We're going to roll it out in the sun. We're going to let it dry and then we're going to let it outgas. I'm going to let this outgas really good. Remember guys, if something has a solvent in it, it needs to evaporate out and the material will shrink. Even if it's catalyzed, it's still, this material will shrink. So let it shrink up, give it a couple of days, 2 or 3 days, park it out in the sun, let it do its thing before you start sanding on it. Because you could sand it and think you got all the sand scratches out and everything, then it continues to shrink and those sand scratches come back magically once you got color and clear on it. So always let them outgas, let them set up, let them do their thing before you get your final sand going. Okay guys, that pretty much wraps up this video on getting the hood kind of reblocked out a little bit since we put that Flutter Kit on there. Still kind of feel like an idiot for not doing it first, but hey, learn from my mistakes. But it's looking really, really good. I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. So we got it reblocked out a little bit, got that polyester primer sprayed on like a sealer, and we're ready to do our final sand on this thing and get some color and clear on it finally. I'm sure Darren will be loving to get this hood back. So thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Keep those comments coming, guys. I love getting them. I love interacting with you. And like I said, it keeps me motivated to keep making these videos. We'll see you on the next one.